Hey everybody, this is Chris Miller, and welcome to another edition of On the Move with the Caravan football preview. And I'm joined as always with Jim Powers. Jim, how are we doing on week 4?
Yeah, I tell you what a great first 3 weeks of the season it's been. It's a lot of surprises. A lot of the teams that are just they're doing what they do, and that's winning ball games and playing at an extremely high level. But there's been a lot of surprises, and that's been the fun part about it. You're seeing some new names that have been traditional powers in the past that have had some down years that are starting to make, a pretty big comeback and making a lot of noise. And, a couple of those teams are down in Jefferson County. Some of there's a few up here in the St. Louis area. So, yeah, it's just been a great, to sit back and watch, these kids get after it, after the first 3 weeks is just unbelievable. And it was great for me to get out to see some football. This past Friday night, went over to Chaminade to see Chaminade and DeSmet. And just to see the crowd and to see, the packed stands and all that stuff. So, it's been great for the kids. It's been great for everybody. And it's been a lot of fun so far.
Absolutely. And we had a good time broadcasting the St. Pius Grandview game down at St. Pius. And that was always fun as usual. And I think we've got some great matchups that you've highlighted coming up. But let's first look at our new state rankings, which came out on scoopswithdannymac.com. And let's look at Class 6 a little bit and tell us your thoughts on Class 6, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of movement in Class 6, so to say. They're still only ranking 10 teams right now. Nobody else is receiving votes. Liberty North is the team, but I still think, CBC is right there at number 2. Liberty, or at least Summit North is number 3. But then, you've got a Nixa team. And, what they've done to open their season, they knock off Webb City down at Webb, and they beat them up pretty badly. They get a win in week 2, and then they go knock off number 1 in Class 5 Carthage in a last-second touchdown, to solidify a win there. I'm telling you, I think out of everybody in Class 6, Nixa may be playing the best football. And the path that they have to a state championship game, it is not the hardest path that you're going to have to deal with. If they can keep playing at a high level, I'm telling you, I think Nixa right now is the best team in Class 6, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see how they work. DeSmet got off the schneid a little bit this week with a nice victory over Chaminade. Marquette's playing terrific football. They're in the number 6 slot. Joplin, Troy Buchanan's, off to a great season as well. So, Class 6 has just been a lot of fun to watch. I'm interested to see if we're going to see some other teams kind of shuffle themselves into the mix, because you're starting to get into the gauntlet, especially with the Metro Catholic Conference, with CBC and DeSmet getting ready to lock horns here in a couple of weeks. And then you got Rockhurst, who, teams are going to be playing from this side of the state. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how Class 6 is going to shuffle in and out, so to say.
Absolutely. You were talking about DeSmet being the best 0-2 team in the state. And obviously, records, whoever you're playing, if you're playing good teams, your record might not be as good, but doesn't mean you're not a good football team. So obviously the coaches, the panel, they believe that DeSmet was one of the top teams, and obviously being tied for 5th there on the rankings. Let's look a little bit at Class 5. What do you think about Class 5 so far, Jim?
I still think it's the toughest class in the state of Missouri without any doubt. I mean, and Carthage, yes, they lost to Nixa. They still deserve to be the number 1 team. I had no issues with the state panel putting them at number 1. I'm still bothered by how not being number 2. That just really irritates me. With the way they've started the season, you knock off Jackson, you knock off Zumwalt North, you knock off Liberty North. Come on, what more of a resume do you need right there? And so I really think Howell should be the number 2 team. You got MICDS, and I just, talked to Fred Bouchard, and he's on the podcast today from MICDS. What a great, start to the year they have. They lost a lot of pieces to the puzzle last year, But I'm telling you, this year, they've got some kids. Winston Moore has come out of the gate really playing well. Cortland Dalton on the defensive side of things. How about him averaging 10 tackles a game in the first 3 games? So MICDS in that 4 slot. Then you look at Lebanon, Helias, which Helias is going to have a big matchup against Ritter this week. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then you got Osage, you got Holt, and then you got Timberland, down there, and plus Camdenton as well. So I'm telling you, and I still will say this all year long, you win Class 5, I think you're the best team in the state of Missouri.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And I'm kind of wondering, I agree. Francis Howell should be, in my opinion, would be probably ranked at 2 if I was if I was king for the day. But do you think there's a little Webb City bias, maybe just a little bit?
And once again, do they deserve it? Absolutely, they do. Come on, I mean, what
they're a great
John's
program
done down there, they're a great program. But the problem I have is, week 1, you get boat raced on your home field against a Nixa team who's had your number over the last couple of years. But then you look at what Hal's done, with the wins over North Jackson and Lutheran North. Put those 2 resumes together. I'm sorry, Hal should be the number 2 team. And I think Jeff City is getting the benefit of the doubt right now. And in talking to some friends down there, they're going to have a really good team this year, and they're going to make a deep run. But I think right now they're not looking at that. They're looking at the tradition, and they're not putting schedule against schedule right now. And that's the part of the state poll that bothers me.
Right. And I think that kind of goes with every state poll, because sometimes people don't know what's happened on one side of the state or the other, but that's where the panel is supposed to kind of come in and do that. But that could be a long conversation for another day.
That's on the coaches box. That'll be coming up on the coaches box at some point.
Well, I'm sure we'll bring up rankings at some point as well. Moving on to Class 4, what do you think about Class 4 right now, Jim?
Once again, I have no issue with St. Mary's being the number 1 team. They traveled up to Naperville this past week, lost to an extremely talented Neuquoid Valley team. And once again, this is a Neuquoid Valley team that has St. Mary's numbers, so to say. They beat them in a great game here in South City last year, turned around and played another instant classic this past weekend up in the Chicagoland area. Kearney is Kearney. They're always going to be in the mix. They're the number 2 team. Smithville, the defending state champs, they're going to be your number 4 team. Vashon, coming off of a bye week. Once again, this is a really good team that Will Franklin's put together. And then you look at Hillsboro. We talked about Hillsboro with a statement game last week, traveling to a very hostile environment up in St. Charles County at Zumwalt West. Close game early, but then they just asserted themselves, and they asserted themselves up front. And that's where they are going to win games, is, up on the offensive, defensive line. And that was a great tune-up for what they're going to get this week that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But, Class 4, once again, I think St. Mary's is the cream of the crop right there. But you got a Kearney team that's nipping at their heels, and they're always going to be in that mix. A really, really good program out in the western part of the state.
Yeah, there's some really good programs in Class 4 right now, and I think Hillsboro is a dark horse, because if they can continue to win out and show their dominance, they're very balanced in their defense. They got a couple of kids playing linebacker that absolutely are like sledgehammers. So it should be a real interesting finish to the season as we go along. Let's go ahead and move on to Class 3, and I love Class 3 just because of all these schools that we have. We got a few unbeatens here. Jim, what do you think about Class 3?
Well, you've got a big matchup looming here between Lutheran St. Charles and Ritter in a couple weeks. I mean, once again, great teams. Lutheran St. Charles has the third of the Harris boys, at running back and at linebacker. That's just terrific. You've got a Ritter team that just has unbelievable weapons on their offensive side out on the edges. There's no doubt that they're the 1 and 2 teams, and they're going to be there when push comes to shove later on in the season. St. Pius out of Kansas City, a team that we saw in the state championship last year, bouncing back, putting together a terrific year. Valley Catholic in the 5 slot. Here we go. I mean, what Chad's done down there is just, he keeps it going. And, last year I think there was a little bit of that shock with the jump from 1 to 3. I think this year they've kind of settled in. And, when you beat the teams that they beat in the early part of the season, that's just showing what Valley is all about. And then you got Lutheran North, a 1 and 2 team. But my gosh, look at Lutheran North's schedule. Early season, Blair
It's a
Oaks.
meat grinder.
Oh gosh, how? I mean, this was not an easy setup for Kyle Wagner and his crew. And that's so. But once again, that's how they wanted to schedule, and that schedule is going to get them ready for district. It's going to get them ready for later on in the season. So Class 3, really good. You got Park Hill Central, team just outside of our area that we talk a lot about down in Jeffco, because a lot of the Jefferson County schools play them. But it's, once again, Class 3 is a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of great teams, and it's really going to be really interesting to see what happens there. And then in Class 2, I've been saying it all year long, give Blair Oaks the state trophy. I made a comment to somebody. I'm like, how do you put Blair Oaks down to 2? And somebody said, well, we got to give Lamar somebody to play. I get it, but gosh, what Ted LePage has done out of Blair Oaks, and Lamar just continues to roll. The post Scott Bailey era has just continued to crank out state title teams, and that's where Class 2 is a lot of fun to watch as well. But the state rankings, I think overall are good. I still have some issues with a few. Class 5, I still say Hal's the number 2 team in the state. But we'll see how everything starts to shake out as we really start to get deep into the season.
Right. And rankings only mean so much. I like to say that they're kind of like locker room material, especially when you're playing the ranked team. And then at the same time, if you are the ranked team, it's like having a bullseye on your back. So I do like them for the kids and the recognition of the school, but I also hate them as a coach, because then at the same time, maybe there might be a false sense of where we are. Maybe we feel comfortable. I don't know. But I do think that all these games are going to play out, and then we're going to see where everybody falls. So rankings, they're great. We love to talk about them and go over them, but at the same time, the game is played not on paper, but on the field.
Yeah, without a doubt. And yeah, I mean, polls and rankings are great for all of us to talk about, Yep. I mean, and that's what they're there for. But they don't mean anything when it comes to playing in the state tournament and playing for a state championship. And yeah, me and you have talked about this. I've talked a lot about it, on some of my podcasts up here. I've said, I don't think that polls should be out any earlier than week 3. Honestly, I think this should be the first week of polls. Because you really can't, we talk about Webb City, and okay, they're ranked number 2 maybe because of their tradition and all that stuff. You saw that with the Smet 0-2 last week, right. and they're the number 5 team, I think it was, in Class 6. I just think you need to wait a couple weeks to kind of let the dust settle. That's why I waited till this week to unveil, my top 10s on Scoop with Danny Mack. Because I wanted to wait a little bit. I wanted to see what the landscape was going to be, and it gives me a pretty good gauge on who's doing what and how everything is shaking out.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, let's jump right into our highlighted matchups for the week. I think we have some really good matchups that we're going to look at here. First, we have the 3-0 Herculaneum Black Cats. It's awesome. They're 3-0, I-55 conference. They're going to make the trip down I-55, and they're going to take on Class 1 and number 7th ranked St. Vincent, who sport their own 3-0 records. We got a couple of unbeatens here playing. Last week, Herculaneum outlasted a defensive slugfest with Jefferson. They won 16-8. And in their own last week, St. Vincent, they dominated Perryville en route to a 38-7 win. And the Black Cats are off to their best starts since 2004. And while both teams look to remain undefeated, the last time Herculaneum won a matchup against St. Vincent was 2014. So I think this is a big matchup, especially when we're talking about I-55, the I-55 conference, a couple of unbeatens. Jim, what do you think about this game?
I think this is for the I-55 conference title. Herky's been through a couple wars already. I'm not sure if St. Vincent has, been through what Herculaneum's been through in the first 3 games of the season. So it's going to be a great matchup. I think the Herky defense stepped up big time this past Friday night in limiting Jefferson R7 to 8 points. In just, like you said, it was a slugfest. And, when you got, Jackson Daring, who steps up in a big, big fashion in the second half, a quarterback leading that drive at the end to get the touchdown. But I can't say enough about Herky's defense right now. That they're just doing so many great things, and that's where you got to build your championship teams, is on the defensive side of things. And if they can continue to do that, I think they can. I think they can beat St. Vincent's, and I think they can really, really take stranglehold on the I-55 conference right now. I know they've got some games and some pretty big matchups coming up, but I just love the makeup of this team. I love what they're doing offensively and defensively. I think Jackson has really grown as a quarterback this year, and he's making smart decisions. He's not doing anything that he doesn't need to do, and he's staying level headed, and he's making the right decisions and putting his guys into good slots. And when you got some other guys out there that can help you out, you look at Austin, you look at Dylan, Jarvis, and those kids. I mean, they're all doing the right things. They're not making mistakes, and that's the big thing. If you don't make a lot of mistakes, you're going to win a lot of ball games.
Right. And I mean, last week, kind of a battle of field position because the stats weren't anything glamorous for either team. But sometimes you just got to do those little things and what it takes to win. I think Herculaneum, they've been winning the line of scrimmage here lately, so it's going to be interesting to see what St. Vincent has cooked up for them. And in our next matchup, talk about more undefeated teams. We got 3-0 North County Raiders. They're going to travel to Hillsboro and take on the Class 4 7th ranked Hawks. North County is coming off a 42-0 win against DeSoto last week. Hillsboro is coming off their own lopsided defeat of Fort Zumwalt West at Zumi West. And North County will have its hands full because the Hillsboro rushing attack has accumulated 1,196 yards on the ground in just 3 games. And, of course, they're led by K-State recruit Austin Romaine. Jim, this is going to be one of those, you got to watch this at some point, matchups.
Here we go. Bottom line. I mean, this is the conference championship game right there. Was last year a terrific battle down at North County between these two teams. Romaine is really turning into be one of the top running backs in the metro area, if not in the state. He's averaging over 300 a game. Or I'm sorry, their rushing offense is averaging over 300 a game. I think he's averaging right around 140 a game in that ballpark. Once again, it starts up front with Hillsboro, and it's going to start up front with North County. This is going to be a game in the trenches. If you can control the line of scrimmage and you can extend drives with your rushing attacks, the winner of that battle is going to win this ball game. And, I can't say enough with the job that Hillsboro has done. North County, year in and year out, they're a team that made a long run last year in the state playoffs. I mean, this is just one of those must-see games in Jefferson County that you don't want to miss, because it may be the best game in not only Jefferson County, but in the state of Missouri this week. It's just going to be so much fun to watch.
Absolutely. And I'm actually surprised, given what North County did last year and how they've kind of rolled into this year with the 3-0 start, that they haven't gotten more love in the rankings. That's just me personally.
Yeah, no. And I absolutely agree with that. I think North County should, with what they did last year, they beat Fashawn in the sectional, and then they lost in the quarter, but still they deserve to have a little bit of love, at least getting votes. And once again, everybody's trying to do it. I mean, and I give the guy, I was on that panel for 5-6 years, and I get it. I know how much work goes into it. I know how much, arguing or back and forth via email about who should be ranked in this, that, and the other thing. But no, I think that North County absolutely should be at least getting votes in their side of things. And it's a shame that they're not. But once again, you beat a Hillsboro team this week, I think you're straight up in the conversation. But if Hillsboro beats them at home, I think Hillsboro makes a pretty big jump in the number 4, into a number 5 slot, maybe, with some of the battles that are going to go on with teams, above them this coming week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things shake out after that one. So let's stay in Jefferson County, because our next matchup is going to feature St. Pius X. They're going to make a very short drive down Highway 61, face off with I-55 conference rival Jefferson, because hey, that's just one of those games, man. I mean, it's going to be kind of crazy. The Lancers, who sit at 2-1, they're coming off a dominating 35-0 win over Grandview last week, where they accounted for 368 yards on the ground. The 1-2 Blue Jays are looking to get back to 500 after suffering a tough loss to Herculaneum last week, 16-8, as we already discussed. Both teams have strong defenses, which could result in another I-55 slugfest. Jim, what do you think about this one? And show the Lancers a little bit of love, okay?
I saw the Lancers play last week, and I watched some of the bright. I mean, Dan's done a great job. I like what Smith is doing at quarterback. Still making some mistakes here and there, but I think he's growing into it. I think he's understanding a lot of what, Dan Oliver wants him to do in running that offense. But it's all defense right now for the Lancers. I love what they do defensively. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They disguise some of their stunts and some of their blitz packages really, really well. And I think that's going to be a big key against Jefferson. And I think Herky may have set a blueprint, so to say, on how you can go after Jefferson by putting a lot of pressure in the backfield. If you can get your DNs, if you can get them, releasing and getting into the backfield to make, the Blue Jays quarterback, kind of think a little bit more, I think you're doing a lot of good things. If I'm Jefferson, I've got to figure out some way to put points on the scoreboard. And that's kind of been the bugaboo with them for the last couple of weeks, is they just haven't been able to get the offense rolling. It's going to be a great matchup. I got to lean a little bit towards Pius right now because I love what they're doing offensively, but I think their defense is just stepping up in a big, big time fashion.
I think that it just watching, and I'm around St. Pius a little bit more than other schools to see their games, but I think if senior defensive end Alex Moises has a really good game and can get in the backfield and disrupt and make tackles for losses, get some sacks, I'm going to look for the Lancers to win. But if he can't get in there and the defense can't get in the backfield, as you said, I think we're in for a treat as far as just one of those good old fashioned ground and pound, blue collar slugfest kind of games that we've seen a little bit this year in the I-55.
Yeah, and once again, I think you just mentioned him. Moises is going to be a big key. I saw them play against Bishop DeBerg a couple weeks ago. Was really impressed with how he was just, fundamentally sound, doing some great things on the edge to get into the backfield and really drive the DeBerg offense crazy. And he did it last week against, Grandview. If he can figure out ways to get loose and, get off blocks and get into the backfield, yeah, it could be a long night for Jefferson, but if they can figure out a way using their tight end or, their running backs are going to have to block. I mean, this is a kid that you're going to have to match up against the running back, in pass protection and that kind of things. If they aren't able to do that, then it could be a long night for Jefferson.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on to our fourth matchup, and that's going to feature the 3-0 and newly ranked Timberland facing off against Fort Zumwalt West. Last week, the now 10th ranked Wolves decisively defeated Vianney 63-13 to remain undefeated and have been led by dual threat senior quarterback A.J. Raines, who has 733 passing yards and 290 rushing yards, which does lead the team for the season. The 1-2 Jaguars were defeated at home last week by Hillsboro 49-13. Why is this an intriguing matchup for you, Jim?
Because it's JAC and it's JAC West. And JAC West right now, and no disrespect to the Metro Catholic right now, but the JAC West may be the best conference in the state. When you look at Timberland, when you look at Zumi West, you look at Hal, you look at Troy. I mean, right there, you got four of the top dogs in the state of Missouri and in this side of the state. So whenever you start matching up JAC West against, in conference, my gosh, it's going to be, 5-6 deep on the fences. It's going to be a packed house. And I love what Raines is doing. I just love what the Timberland program has done. I mean, this was a doormat in the JAC West, 5 years ago. And you look at how they've turned their program around. And it's been fun to watch. I mean, last year, the battles that them and Troy had were just, Earl Austin Jr., a good friend of ours, he called me after they played and he says, JP, I've never seen this many people at a St. Charles County football game ever. I mean, there was 8,000 people there. And that's where, that's where the football has grown. It's grown. So, we're seeing some great football in Jeffco. We're seeing some, we've been seeing some outstanding football out in St. Charles County. And Timberland has been one of those teams that have, started to come to the party, so to say, and they're mixing it up with the best of them. Zumwalt West has been there for a long time. Back, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was just them and Howe. And some of those battles were just unbelievable. And so you never count a Zumi West, team out. And especially coming off of a loss to Hillsboro, they're going to be ready to roll. But this Timberland team, once again, they do a lot of great things. Raines is a very good quarterback, and he can tuck it and run as well. They got some big dudes up front. But once again, it's JC West football, and that's where this game really is going to get a lot of spotlight on it because of how that conference has really grown over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and Timberland's not really a powerhouse, a traditional powerhouse per se. So it's kind of neat to see some of the schools as their programs improve, as they develop their athletes to kind of jump in there and be a part of that party of really good football in that area.
Absolutely. And once again, that's been a fun thing. It's been fun watching them and Troy really, flourish out, in St. Charles. And then once again, you look at what's happening in Jeffco right now with Hillsboro, with Turkey. Festus having a great year last year. And I know they're struggling a little bit right now, and they're still trying to find their identity in the past, Cole Rickerman era, so to say. But there's still great football down there. And we've seen it out in St. Charles. We're seeing it in Jeffco. And when we're starting to see great teams in all areas of the Metro, that's when it really gets a lot of fun.
Right. And talk about our next matchup, which features the 1-1 Vashon Wolverines taking on the 0-3 SLU High Junior Billikens. Class 4, 5th-ranked Vashon, who didn't have a game scheduled last week, last played against Class 3, 2nd-ranked Cardinal Ritter in Week 2, suffering a 29-7 loss. The Junior Bills lost last week to CBC 63-35, and all 3 losses this season have been to state-ranked opponents. Jim, what's your thoughts on this one?
Vashon is, once again, we talk a lot about, the Public High League in St. Louis and how in the past they haven't really scheduled tough in the non-conference side of things. Well, Will Franklin has changed that dramatically. Last year we saw it a little bit. This year we see it a lot. I mean, you've got a Vashon team that opened up beating Kirkwood. Fell to Ritter last week, and 2 weeks ago, week off last week. Now they get SLU High. That's setting you up for success at the end of the season, especially once they get into PHL games where you're not going to play the best talent. You're not going to play the best teams. And so it's games like this that are getting the Wolverines ready to go for a pretty deep run. And I think they can make a pretty deep run. I think they can be one of the first PHL teams in years that can make it to a state semifinal. As long as they take care of their business. And it's games like this that will help. And especially you're going against one of the top juniors in the country in Ryan Wingo. But teams have kind of figured out some ways to keep him away from the football. And that's where, interim head coach Adam Cruz has got to be creative offensively to, get Ryan the ball a lot more. I think it's going to be a great matchup. It'll be a packed house over at the U-High. That's actually where I'm going to be going on Friday night to watch that game because it's an intriguing matchup. And once again, it's a matchup that I think a lot of people have wanted to see for the last couple of years. And now we're finally going to get a chance to see it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious to see if since SLU High is playing some, has a great schedules early on. We talked about coaches wanting to up their schedules a little bit. I'm kind of curious to see how they handle Vashon, who didn't play this last week and are very talented as well. So could be a really good matchup. Don't let any of the records fool you. I mean, these are good football teams.
No doubt about it. It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, so our next matchup features another set of undefeated teams. We have the 3-0 Eureka Wildcats making a trip to take on the 3-0 Marquette Mustangs. Eureka's coming off a dramatic 31-30 win over Kirkwood last week. It was clinched by a 42-yard field goal from junior kicker Bryce Clark just as time expired. Marquette defeated Hazelwood Central last week 23-7. Not as much fanfare as Eureka's game, but they've displayed a balanced attack on offense this season with a stingy defense that's only allowed 23 points in 3 games. Jim, What do you think about this one?
How about district rivals just going after each other? And, that's been the fun thing about, the Rockwood School District. They've had great football. And we see it once again. I mean, a backyard rival between these two teams. Eureka coming off, just an unbelievable, win last week. I mean, they were down 10. And, Kirkwood couldn't put them away. And, the big thing is that Eureka had a field goal missed with little less than 2 minutes remaining, forced a 3-and-out, and then got the ball back. And then we see the heroics from Clark, to win the ball game. But the unbelievable team. Kevin Emanuel is another running back that we're going to see a lot. We're going to talk a lot about throughout the year. I mean, he's having a terrific season through 3 games. Marquette, Jack Althart, what a great kid he is at quarterback. He does so many good things. And we talk about quarterbacks a lot, and we talk about, controlling the game and managing the game and not making very many mistakes. And that's, where Jack Althart, really, really is a special kind of kid. He puts the Mustangs into great situations, but their defense is fantastic. I'm really anxious to see what they're going to try to scheme up to stop Emanuel. Because Emanuel has just been on fire over the first 3 games to start the season. So this is a great matchup early. Once again, another one of those great early season matchups that we love watching, and it's going to be interesting to see the defensive side for Marquette trying to stop this really, really high-powered rushing game that Eureka is going to throw at you.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the key to the game is what Marquette can do with that good defense that they have to stop him. Man, he's just been on a tear. His stats are good. He plays really well, and to have those stats. So on top of that, Eureka's done a great job running the football all year. They're fairly balanced, so it should be a fun matchup to see. And again, talk about how things shake out. Here's an opportunity for Eureka maybe to show that they're worthy of some rankings, and then Marquette the same way, because if either one of these teams moved to 4-0, they beat some good schools.
Yeah, without a doubt. And once again, this is a resume building game for both of these two teams. And you look at where they're at classification wise. Marquette's up in 6, Eureka drops down to 5. And once again, you talk about Eureka team in 5 with Francis Howell. That just makes Class 5 even more, out of this world ridiculous and off the rails. But I mean, it's just a lot of fun to see, these types of teams and how they're going about their business. And once again, this is just going to be a fun matchup between really, really 2 well-coached, solid teams.
Absolutely. I like how you used off the rails right there. That was good.
Had to mix it in. Had to mix it in
right?
At least once. Yeah, no
we
doubt.
love it. We love it. And it's again, these are a lot of fun matchups that we have right here, and it's because of great scheduling by these schools to allow us to see these powerhouse schools play each other. Again, not a lot of cupcakes are being played by these really good schools. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Class 6 or you're talking about Class 2. So I think this is kind of it's fun as a fan, and it's fun for people who like to sit there and talk about it as coaches, and then just again spectators, fans of the sport. So I think this is one of those games too. As you said, resume building is a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, and it's not a trap game either. A lot of people think that games like this are trap games. No, this is not a trap game. This is the byproduct of the way that the state playoffs are set up right now. This is the byproduct of, you've got to schedule up or schedule against good teams to help get you those points to get seated higher in the district. And once again, we've talked a lot about it. I've talked a lot about it. I love what the coaches are finally doing. They're not shying away from playing great games and great competition early in the season before they start dipping their toe in the conference play, because it's games like this that will get you ready and battle tested for what you're going to see in districts and then what you're going to see moving forward in the state bracket.
Absolutely. And that's again, talk about it's your end goal is to get to that point where you're ready to compete in the state playoffs. It doesn't matter really what your record is. You're just trying to set yourself up to be ready to be able to compete in your class to make a run. And in football,
absolutely,
in football as easy as it. I mean, it's not easy, but there's less teams to get through to get to that point to have that opportunity. So you got to take advantage of it. You got to prepare your team the right way. And I think a lot of our coaches in the state are doing a great job of making that adaptation. and then doing that with their schedule. And then you can see as a fan what we get to watch. Speaking of what we get to watch, I think I'm really, this was the one I circled in, even over my home St. Pius X Lancers this week. The final game we're going to highlight is the battle between 2-1 St. Mary's. They're going to take on 3-0 Lutheran St. Charles this week. The Dragons, who are currently ranked number one in Class 4, lost last week to Mequon Valley, like you said, 21-20. The host Cougars, they're ranked number 1 in Class 3. They defeated St. Dominic 45-3 last week. They've only allowed 19 points total to their opponents this season. Jim, talk about your scheduling. We get a matchup between the number 1 team in Class 4 and the number 1 team in Class 3. What do you think about this one?
And 2 defending state champions.
And I forgot to mention that.
you don't see that very often. You just don't get a chance to see a matchup like this very often, and especially in week 4. Now, both teams are in the AAA conference, but there's not going to be a AAA conference football champion this year because of some things that have gone on, and not everybody's playing everybody this year. And so this game is going to be for bragging rights. It's not going to be for a conference title. It's going to be more bragging rights. And once again, we talked about, Aiden Harris, what an unbelievable sophomore he is. Running back, does some great things. I think he's a better linebacker. He was the co-AAA Player of the Year last year as a freshman. And he just does so many great things. Arlen Harris, they lost a lot, when they lost AJ last year. To graduation, and AJ's doing some great things out at Stanford already, but that's a team that really reloaded themselves. And then you look at St. Mary's, the post Kevin Coleman era, which Kevin doing some terrific things down at Jacksonville State, or Jackson State, excuse me, the home of primetime. But they've filled some holes as well, and Ken Turner's done a terrific job there. They've got some big kids up front. They've got the weapons out on the edge. They got 2 of the best wide receivers in the metro area. The biggest key is going to be, how can you figure out a Lutheran St. Charles defense and how to score against them? And I think coming off this Mequon Valley game, it really kind of opened some eyes to some things that St. Mary's needed to work on, because the schedule doesn't get any easier for St. Mary's after this game. They're loaded. You're playing a DeSmet team later on this season. You've got some great matchups. And so this is going to be a game where, everybody's going to have their eyes on, number 1, because the top teams in Class 4 and Class 3, defending state champs, taking on each other. But I think a lot of people want to see what these 2 teams are all about and how deep of a run they can really make in the postseason this year.
Yeah, and with St. Mary's being bumped up because of the championship factor, they're trying to prove themselves too, as far as being the number 1 team in Class 4. They obviously have showed it as far as their talent's concerned, as far as winning. And on top of that, it's just, we have these 2 powerhouses right now playing. I'm just excited. I just love to see how this one shakes out and just let it all be decided. It's going to be a chess match between the coaches, obviously, and then, of course, trying to figure out how to keep Lutheran St. Charles from getting in the backfield and then disrupting your offense. But at the same time, it goes both ways.
Oh, without a doubt. You've got skilled position dudes all over the place in this game, and you've got great defenders all over the place in this game. Once again, you can't ask for a better matchup early in the season. And once again, the biggest part of this is going to be, what can we take out of this game, win or lose? Both teams have terrific schedules going forward. Both teams, moving up a class, so they're trying to, they want to solidify their places, saying that they belong in Class 4 and Class 3. But once again, this is a game to where you're going to take a lot out of it, win or lose. And that's the best thing about it, because once again, you look at St. Mary's district, they're going to have to go against a Summit team at some point in that district. You look down with Lutheran St. Charles, guess what? You've got Lutheran North sitting in your back pocket right there in that district. This is going to be a game to where, okay, what do we need to get better on, because we know what we're going to be seeing in district, and then once again moving forward in the state tournament.
Absolutely. But Jim, it should be another fun week of football to watch. Sit back, kind of see how things shake out. As we talked about, I think we have some excellent matchups. that we've highlighted. And I mean, I might say this every week. I'm just excited to be a fan. I just love it. I love watching high school football and then seeing how these teams all interact and play, and again, how the chips fall.
I'm just, once again, and I've said it a lot, I'm just glad that we're out of all the protocols and everything. And I really think we're seeing that part of it in the early season where the guys had full summers to be able to do their normal stuff. And I
Right.
think that we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot better football at the beginning of this year than what we've seen over the last couple of years. And yeah, I mean, I love being a fan right now and then going on Fox 2 on Friday nights, talking about some of the games there, talking with you, on our show here. And that's what it should be all about. We should be celebrating these kids and we should be celebrating what they're doing, celebrating the coaches. And that's the fun part about it. And getting out the games and seeing some of these terrific matchups, it's just so much fun to be able to do that again, since we weren't able to do it for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that plays a big role, especially talk about off-season preparation, being able to be around people, and the protocols different in different areas. You've seen different areas that have thrived because they had less. You've seen other places where we weren't able to do certain
Sure.
things, but now everybody's kind of on a level playing field. So I think the cream's going to rise to the top as far as who's going to be good, and well, it's just going to be fun again to watch how it all plays out.
No
So
doubt about it.
so, Jim, I appreciate you joining me for more of Jim's analysis and his highlights of high school sports. Make sure you guys tune in to scoopswithdannymac.com. Jim has content on there all the time. I mean, you're constantly doing something. So I know that you're putting stuff out there for Scoops, and tell us a little bit about that before we take off.
Yeah, you know what? It's free content, and that's the big thing.
Free?
Yeah,
How much?
free,
Free.
free,
Okay.
free. But no, it's just we're having a lot of fun with it. I'm actually, did a story yesterday. Our student athlete of the week. How about a young lady over at Granite City that is their place kicker, a girl,
Wow.
sophomore girl. What a great story it is. And it was so much fun to talk to her and put that story together. But we're doing our student athletes of the week every Wednesday. We're doing our polls on Tuesdays. Monday and Fridays are kind of our wrap up recap days, so to say. And then we have the podcast every Thursday that comes out at 10 o'clock right before, our stuff comes out here at noontime. But it's so much fun. And I get to have fun with it, and having Dan McLaughlin, a big name,
Yeah.
wanting to put the spotlight on the kids and wanting free content on his website to celebrate what these kids are doing and what the coaches are doing. Once again, it lets me get back to my roots and having a lot of fun and writing and really celebrating what these kids are be able to do. And that's been the great thing. And, Dan basically has given me a blank canvas to do all of that stuff. And that's where, I get to do whatever I want to do. And, we've just run with it. And it's been so much fun.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Dan McLaughlin and you and we've talked about it. We share the same thing. We love when high school sports are basically it's free to watch. They're free to get to read the coverage about it, because I mean that's what you want. You want everybody to have access to this and to make sure that they can either see their kid or their grandkid, or read about them, and it's something that they can always treasure, remember. Hey, you're a player of the week this week for Scoops, or there's that recognition thing. You never know what that parlays into post high school, if they have an opportunity to maybe play at the next level when that media recognition comes in.
And that's the big thing. And I've been very vocal about it. I hate the fact that high school sports are being treated like college sports and NFL sports. You're putting stories behind a paywall, or different things along those lines. That's not where high school sports should be. High school sports should be at the forefront, free. That way everybody can access it, and everybody is able to watch it and see it and read about it, because these kids deserve it. I mean, and especially coming out of COVID, these kids
Yeah.
had so much taken away from them. You talk about the spring sports 2 years ago. Those poor kids didn't even get a chance to play. Then you go into protocols, and you'll see, St. Louis County not able to start a football game until the end of September 2 years ago. These kids had so much taken away from them. Let's not burden it anymore. Let's get these kids out into the forefront, and let's show exactly what these kids can do and how they can do it and what they're doing. Let's celebrate them instead of, trying to do the exact opposite, making people pay for something that should not be behind a paywall, so to say. So, that's been the fun thing is everything we do, everything that you guys are doing, that we're doing it off the rails, that I'm doing with Scoops with Danny Mac, it's all free content. And it's all, for anybody to see. And you know what? Do I get an email every now and then saying, Jim, I don't agree with your poll? At least somebody's watching or somebody's reading it. That's all I care about.
Right.
You can disagree with me. You can not like what I have to say. But guess what? You're watching or you're reading. And that means that the kids are getting the spotlight that they deserve.
100% agree, man. Cannot agree more. I love what we're all trying to do here. Well, again, Jim, I appreciate you joining me and talking a little football. I think it's going to be a great week, man.
Can't wait. It's going to be so much fun, and it's going to be a lot of great games. Make sure, if you're down in Jeffco, get out to a game. If you're up here in St. Louis, get out to a game. Celebrate these kids. Watch these kids because they're playing at such a high level right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, 100%. And if you can't get out and watch it, you can always go and find a streaming service. Sometimes you can check the YouTube for those host schools. Streamline Sports, you can download that app for free and watch there. You can download on Google Play, Apple Store, Roku, and Fire TV. And then you have on-demand access to a number of games, especially in Jefferson County. So, Jim, again, thank you for hanging out with me and talking football. Everybody, appreciate you guys tuning in as well. This has been another episode of On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview. We will see you guys next week.
Tune in for new episodes of Coach's Box each week on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or the Streamline Sports app. And you can also listen to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview with Jim Powers is brought to you by Scoops with Danny Mac and Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.